Hey guys, welcome out to the shop. I have a couple of projects I need to bang out today, and I figured I would take you along so that I could illustrate how it is I do my inlays. I'm going to start with a single inlay on the back half of this pen blank, a double inlay on the back half of this pen blank, and we're going to do a quad inlay for this seam ripper that I have to do. I'll do these in succession so that you can see start to finish what the single inlay looks like turned, the double, then the quad. And I'll have them broken up into 3 different videos so that you can just watch the one you need, or you can come back and watch all 3 as many times as you need to. That being said, let's get this first one over to the table saw and we'll get started. So the first thing to note is how deep we're going to cut. So you only ever want to come up about, I don't know, maybe 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. You want to make sure that you leave some meat on the outside of the wood. This will just make the glue up a lot easier because if you cut at an angle, when you try to glue, they're just going to want to slide off of each other. And then for a single inlay, possibly even the double, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. If your wood grain doesn't line up perfectly, it's not really going to be that detrimental to the overall pattern. But when you start getting into quads and more, the rings will start to shift up and down the blank if they don't remain true to each other. You'll see when we get to the quad blank exactly what I mean. But for now, let's get the saw set to where we want it. Looks about right. And then I already have where I want this to cut set up. Basically all I did was drew a line where the end of the blank was going to be, and then when I put it at a 45 here, I'll pour it up so you can see it. I look at where the edge of this one is and the edge of this one is, and I shoot it between where the blade comes up so that I get it roughly centered on the back half of the blank. All right. I'll see y'all back over at the table. That's our first one done. As you can see, our inlay fits in nice with just enough room in there so that we can get a nice amount of, what am I going to use today? I guess I'll use 2-part epoxy. Once I have some ready to go. And then this should flex apart just a little bit. Just enough to get that in there. But now, when you throw the clamp on, it pushes shut nice and cleanly, but it can't slide on itself. So we'll let that sit for a few minutes, and I will see you guys over at the sander where we will knock off these edges and get it back to true. For the single, it does not matter. But when you're doing the double inlays and you have to go back and put it on the table saw, you're going to need those edges flat. So good practice, just if you're doing 1 or if you're doing 30, just sand in between every one so you're always working with a square blank. We'll just knock these edges down flat and then we'll get back over to the lathe. we are just going to get this board out real quick so that we can put the brass insert in, and then we can turn it and see how it looks. Spin you all around here. We'll back to the table. We'll get the tube in. Now I know you don't necessarily have to see all these steps to get into the knot part, but I figured if I go through the whole process for one, then when I get into the other two, we don't have to worry about it. You guys know what's going on already. Clean off some burrs on that real quick. And we'll get a little bit of medium. And I need a piece of sandpaper. Just got to scuff the brass up a little bit, just so the glue's got something to hold on to. And then I just give it a little twist to make sure that the glue is spreading to all sides. Pull it back out a little bit and you can verify that it is twisting all the way around as it goes in. And then you can see it's out to the edge, out to the edge. Now, the other thing I like to do is take a little bit of thin CA and just at the edges, put a little drop, because then if there is any air gap in there, it'll flood down beside that brass tube, and make sure that we get good adhesion. Last thing you want is one of these pulling out on you, because it's a pain. So we'll let that sit there for just a second, and while it's drying, I will get you all moved over. Let's get this turned down and see what that single inlay looks like. Now I'm not going to take these all the way to completely finish, just enough that you guys get the idea of what's going on. We'll give it a little bit of a sand so it looks kind of nice and loose. All right. And there you go. And then you see your wood grain stays nice and lined up. Everything looks nice and pretty flowing through. This one you can see is going to have to go down a little bit more because I did have a little bit of tear out, but I was going pretty quick. So on subsequent passes to finish smoothing this out, I'll get those tear out spots taken care of. But that's how we look. So let's get this back over to the table, take another look at it, and then we'll talk about what's in the next video. So I went ahead and sanded this down to 240. and got the little buff spots out and threw a little shine juice on it. And then you can see nice clean inlay. Now, something I spoke about earlier was keeping these from sliding, and this is why that's important. And it's also why I like this technique, is that your grain matches. If you were to cut this block, do I have something with drastic grain? Let's see. Yeah, all right. So let's just say we cut this block and we cut it diagonal, and you're using an 1/8 inch kerf on your saw. But you go back in and you put in, I don't know, maybe like almost a 1/4 inch for your inlay. That's completely fine. But what happens now is that the gap that you cut out, instead of just being that 1/8 inch kerf, is now stretched out here. So instead of this line and this line for this piece of grain matching properly, this is now trying to match to this, but it's way out here. Sometimes it doesn't make a difference. Sometimes it does. Let's say you're dealing with something like this, where there's a little decorative pattern almost in it. Well, if you cut right across this section, and then you split this way down here, this line is not going to match at all. It seems like such a little thing, but your eye will pick up on that. And it's those little details that I think make the difference when you're working with these types of patterns. So just something to keep in mind. In the next video, I will do the double inlay, and I will also have this pen wrapped up to show you. And we will then discuss moving on to doing the quad inlay. So thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope you learned something. Have a great one.